Thank you very much. Thank you, Katie. First of all, thank you very much for the organizers to giving me this opportunity to be here. Vaccination and outdoors, it's something that I always have very close to my heart. I'm from Portugal. I've been working at MSc for the last 5 years, and one thing that we do not have in Portugal is the outdoor pig production that we have in the UK, and with that there is a set of challenges that come out as well. Vaccination of the increasing large number of sows that we keep outdoors, it is a challenge. And the value of a good vaccination, I think it's sometimes underrated, or people don't appreciate how important it is on the production. One of the things that I do notice, like you mentioned before, is the value of that people put on AI and that people put on insemination. I think part of it's a very clear reason, is the value of misconception. So if we have a 1% farrowing rate, or 1% of the farrowing paddocks that are empty, that's a very easy calculation. People can see the loss almost immediately. That would equate, let's say, to 20 grand in a 800 sow unit, and that's if the paddocks are empty. Obviously, just the farrowing rate is not as important because you can overserve, and I think most of you do that. If, for example, during summer, make sure that you can keep the outflow of pigs going regularly. Vaccination, I think it's a lot more, the value is not as appreciated, and I think overall it's not this as important thing, or not as important anyway. Staff-wise, it's also not given as much value. You see a lot more skilled people doing the AI than picking up pigs for vaccination. So for the vaccination, also we need the product to be there. It needs to be well delivered, stored, and administered properly. So the cost of vaccines, giving from 800 sow units and roughly 400 pigs a week, what we would expect is that basically they have about 1,500 pounds in the fridge at any given time, and that's before PRRS, PCV, MHIO, and then the sow vaccine, so the hairy parvos and coli's. So over the period of 1 year, that's be about 80 grand. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I would never buy the amount of food that would cost 80 grand to go through my home fridge. And when I was in practice, I remember going to some people's houses and they would have either a really nice SMEG or a really nice double-door fridge. And then you'd get to the farm office and you'd see a fridge that was probably the old one that was sitting in the house. So and sometimes I would ask them, do you realize that you have a lot more value in your farm fridge than on the house fridge? And most of the times they just don't think about it, or it's just the natural tendency to use what was used on the house before and then put it on the farm. So for the 77 grand also you could buy a golden plated fridge or a very expensive one anyway, unless you have a very different diet from myself and it's caviar every day. So besides the cost of vaccines, it's the way you keep it that are inside as well. Also, that is a very, there is the point, no, oops. Just switch it off. So in that fridge that was there, oh, there it is. As you can see, the freezer door is broken, so there is no control over the temperature. Very likely the temperature on the products that are there, it won't be between the 2 and 8 that it should be to keep the medicines on the farm fridge. Also keep them with food, it's never a good idea, and you can also see a needle on the bottle and on the administration gun that is there. That's an example of a very nicely managed fridge. You can see that we have the temperatures, and you have all the indications for the medicines outside, clearly indicated veterinary medicines, and also no presence of food inside. Then just a very nice fridge as well, and we can also see the presence of the maximum minimum thermometer, which is a really nice, simple, easy way to make sure that the medicines you keep inside are kept within the range that you want. The trackers or the data loggers, they are probably a better idea. They're probably a bit more expensive. I don't know many of you use them or not. That's something that we can discuss after on the end of the panel. But they work really well to make sure that there were no extremes that would compromise the efficacy of the vaccines you use on the farm. One thing that I note outdoors is that sometimes nowadays it's more common to have fridges on the units. And I think the other problem is once you take them off the fridge, and that's a problem on the bigger farms especially, because people take them off the fridge, reconstitute them, as is the case with live PRRS vaccines. and then they probably put them in the pocket or walk around with them in a bucket throughout the farm, basically from mixing until administration. Obviously, after reconstituting the live birds, ours, for example, is 3 hours that you should use it within after reconstitution. So obviously, if you keep it at room temperature after reconstituting for longer than that, you'll be affecting the efficacy as well. And the same thing probably applies for products that you mix on farm as well. Also, if you mix and let it stay for hours and hours and hours, efficacy will be severely compromised as well. So, besides the cost of vaccines, the refrigerator that we keep on the farm, that is data from France, and it's from INRA, and they did a survey, and 28% of people had fridges that were over 15 years old, holding the medicines, 25% between 10 and 15, 11% 6 to 9, 21% 4 to 5. That would be my fridge as well. And only less than 3 years, 15%. So the minority of people had a fridge that would be less than 3 years old. When they looked at the presence of maximum and minimum thermometers, also not a great picture. Nearly 60% of the people did not have a maximum and minimum thermometer. 41% did, and 2% didn't know, or not applicable. So when we take them off the fridge, what we need to do is to use them. And I'm not going into too much detail because Henry is going to talk about handling after. But nowadays, looking at the large-scale production systems that we have in East Anglia and probably spreading on all the outdoors, it's becoming a bit of a strongman challenge. That's in China, by the way. And apparently they need to walk 30 yards with 2 pigs weighing 7 stones each. So what we are doing is basically a challenge, and I think sometimes it's our own fault. We focus on speed, and staff tends to focus a lot on speed, and they make it almost a challenge to see how many pigs they pick up from one place to the other, and not necessarily focus on the quality of the administration onto the pigs. So it shouldn't all be about speed. It should be about giving the vaccine in a correct way to the animal and making sure that the animal is well vaccinated. And we'll come into that. So obviously, poor handling will affect the administration of the vaccine. Obviously, if we don't handle them well, it's a double sword issue because also we are stressing them as well. And if you have stresses, you are asking for other trouble. And this morning we did touch that as well. The other issue is the temperature. Outdoors is probably a bigger problem because people do carry the vaccine outside of fridges or cool boxes for a long period of time. Reconstitution is something that people should take attention, especially outdoors. There is a tendency to take the vaccine in the morning, reconstitute, go for the day, and then use the vaccine as it goes, even if there is coffee break in the middle. And administration. Administration, I think it's particularly important, and that depends a lot on training. And one thing that I think we should ask ourselves, or that you guys should ask yourselves when you get to your units is, do you train your AI staff? So would you get a new guy that just started in your company doing AI on cells or gills? You probably wouldn't. You'd make sure that he gets training either by assimilating from people that do it for a long time well, or you teach them and make sure that someone from AHDB would help them improving their service skills until he's actually serving. On the vaccination, we often see the younger lads that don't really care, that just want to finish their job and move off the unit as fast as possible to get on with their lives, doing the vaccinations. And when you do that, what you end up doing is people that want to rush through the job, and when they rush through the job, the vaccine will probably be very poorly administered, causing problems later on, or causing injuries and causing waste. Waste, not just vaccine waste, but also waste of your money, because obviously if you give the vaccine in the wrong place, or if you don't give it at all, you're wasting the money you spent on the product in the first place. That's an example, and I put these photos of the administration and the location of the administration for the simple reason that sometimes we go on outdoor farms and there is that tendency to say, and I'm saying that because obviously we experience that more often, we have a needle-free device, which Pat Wall mentioned this morning, and that makes life a bit easier because on the pigs you can do it anywhere on the back of the pig, sows on the back of the ear, for example. But with a needle, there is that mentality that as soon as you jab the sow, it's done. And it doesn't really matter the technique, and it becomes almost like a rugby game, chasing the sow around, trying to get her and to stick the needle on her. So the injection site on sows is also very important, because unless you do it on the right place, what you get is you get a lot of fat, and even if you use the right needle size, you end up putting the product on the fat. And it doesn't really do the job if you put it in there. And that's for any vaccine that you use on sows. The same thing obviously applies to piglets, but it's less of an issue, because if we pick them up, and I think we'll see some examples of not picking them up, and in that case it's probably worse. And if you do it on the floor, as some people do nowadays, just because of convenience, it's even more difficult to get the vaccine delivered to the piglet in the right location. So just because the vaccine gets into the piglet and the vaccine comes out of the gun, it doesn't mean that the animal is well vaccinated. And that's another example of doing it in the right place, but with a needle that is too short. And obviously you end up not going intramuscular. So if we miss the correct vaccination, or if we do it wrongly, or if the vaccine ends up on the lorry's floor instead of in the piglet's muscle, and this is just a fact by calculation. So assuming that we miss 20% of the pigs when we're vaccinating against mycoplasma, that will roughly be 400 grams lost per pig, assuming that the pig only start getting mycoplasma or EP-like lesions and EP on the last 8 weeks of life. That was the assumption, not throughout from vaccination, just on the last 8 weeks. That's 400 grams lost per pig, or 50 cents that you lost from every single pig that you kill if you miss 20% on that batch. And that's assuming 1.58. It will be more now because it's 1.59 this week, I think. So good for you guys, because it's a very good price. And if treatment is needed, we go back to what we were discussing this morning about the antimicrobial use. And I assume that you guys need to treat them, because also if you have 20% of the pigs that were missed and become sick or start getting secondary infections, and if you use a common tetracycline that you probably all use throughout your lives as pig producers, what you would get in the end is 140 milligrams of antimicrobial per kilogram of pig meat on that batch, just for treating them on the SPC. So 5 days to prevent the cough that was caused because of poor administration technique. So it's a very costly exercise, and I think with the pressure that antibiotics are under, we can't really afford to keep having poor vaccination technique just because we have too many pigs, or it's too hard. I think either we need to change the systems that we do, or administer the vaccines in different ways to make sure that they work well on the pigs and we don't have these problems. So take-home messages, just some numbers, nothing too lengthy. So 800 sows, about 80 grand of vaccines going through per year. So it pays for a very good fridge. Poor storage or handling, and if 20% get missed, that would result in about 10 grand loss over the cost of that year on 800 sow unit, and 140 milligrams per kilogram of antibiotics if they use a tetracycline to treat them for those 5 days.